Hey there, thanks for joining us today. We're here for workshop number 2. What do I do as the instructor? So today, to be prepared, just make sure you have your notes, syllabus, and then type your favorite villain in the chat. The big goals that we're hoping that you get out of this are getting students registered on time. Huge, 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 huge. How to structure your Statecraft class, and then how to maximize the impact of the simulation within your class. We will have more workshops that definitely will touch on these, but this is a huge component right now in the beginning of our workshops. So IR, so we're going to go to, this link, ir.statecraftsims.com. And then we're going to copy this fall 23-24 workshops as our test right now to logging in and registering as a student. So I'm going to do that on my screen. Feel free to follow along. So we're under student account is what I want. So I'm going to click student account. I'm going to click this button that says not registered yet. And then I'm going to type in that code, fall 23-24 workshops. So what this will do, they click sign up, is it'll bring them to that class, your specific class. As long as you've given them the exact sim code, they can check that by saying their school. Well, this is Statecraft Simulation School. The professor, myself, Stefan Pearls, and our course name, Fall Workshops 23. It's going to be different from for your class. Then they're going to type in their name here. Boom, boom, boom. I will use my Statecraft email. Oops. And I will also put, because I've signed up for a lot of these before as a student, and then they have to fill out a password, should be less than 10 characters, 8 to 10. Click that box that they agree, and then click next step. All right, we're coming into the foreign policy attitude test. If you have selected to have students be designated in specific countries based on the foreign policy attitude test, meaning that you don't need to manually move them around, this is what they'll take. It's 10 questions. So I'll go through this, somewhat quickly, but feel free to linger on this on your own end. Your country needs to cooperate more with the United Nations in settling international disputes. I strongly disagree. Does this really mean? Maybe, maybe not. It's essential for your country to work with other nations to solve global problems such as overpopulation, hunger, and pollution. I feel neutral about that. So students will go through these. If you go through this now and look at each of these questions, it might be helpful maybe as a conversation before the sim, before students register, maybe to kind of pick their brains on what these mean to them, to get them to think about it more. Doesn't mean that that's going to help or hinder their ability to take this quiz, but they're going to go through it. All right, so we're just going to click some more of these, and I'll ask another one. Your country should provide less economic aid to other countries. No, I think that we should. Generally, the more influence your country has on other nations, the better off you are. Strongly agree. So I'm kind of all over the place in mine. What this will do is give me a score. I'm going to press next step. It's not going to tell me the score. It's going to put it in the simulation. And then it's going to rank me on a scale of dovish to hawkish. Every student will be on that scale as long as they've registered on time. And then it'll group those students in areas that are hawkish and are dovish and in between, making those countries automatically polarized in this world. So that's how the students will sign up. Then when the turn 0 begins, they can log in using that password and their email. Typically, it's the school email. That's the one that we see used most. And then they'll understand which country they're in. So I'm going to jump back to our presentation here. Hopefully that helps you just understand the basics of how they register. It's no more than 5 to 10 minutes. If you want to stretch it out and learn about those questions, feel free to do that. Expectations. This is a huge part. We've talked about this a little bit in the last workshop. We will continue to talk about this throughout the next workshops. Adding to your syllabus. What is required for your class for the students to succeed in the sim? Is this the points that they gain from the grading awards? And I'll show you how that looks. Is it assignments that we'll be going over more in October that you are asking of them? Maybe memos, a debriefing presentation, or a paper, or something else completely. The manual quizzes that are encouraged in turn 0 and turn 1, or any other quizzes that you initiate throughout the sim? Are you asking them to register by a specific date to make sure that they have a quick participation point? So adding those as grades could be really helpful in adding that value to your class. The next expectation you're going to want to talk about with your students is what they're expected to do in class and outside of class. If you are saying we're going to spend 45 minutes per turn in class and each turn lasts a week, they know that one of the days during that week is going to be Statecraft. Well, maybe tell them every Tuesday we do Statecraft. Obviously, this is going to depend upon, whether you have a block schedule or you see them every day or how much time you have in those classes. But giving them that expectation can be helpful for them to prepare for those meetings and also to then reflect on their decisions throughout the rest of the week. If I know I'm meeting on Tuesday and the turn doesn't end until Saturday or even Sunday night, then maybe my out of class experience is that I go meet with my team members, maybe at lunch on Thursday. That's just what we do. Maybe we have a specific meeting on the weekend. It's really up to you in terms of how you structure that, but giving them a clear outline and maybe even some examples of how other students have done this. Once you've used it once or twice, I will tell you there's a full range. We'll have teachers end it on Friday afternoon so students can't play on the weekend. We have teachers just let it stay open over breaks so students have time to they have downtime and they're hanging out. Boom, they can keep playing. So it's really up to you how you want that to look. It will never be perfect, but however you decide, definitely test it out and figure out what works best for your students. What does the in-class look like? All right, so you're going to be offering this 45 minutes in class per turn. What does it look like? Are you moving the desks around? Are you having students group as countries? Is it one computer per country, or does everybody need a computer or bringing up their phone to make those decisions? Are we having a UN meeting on a specific day, or a World Council meeting, or another international org meeting on a specific day? Are you allowing for students to work outside of their countries on one day and internally in another day? So there's a lot of ways that you can have that look, and the physicality of a room can really play a big part in that so that students are actively engaged with their country and potentially not being able to perform espionage in the classroom, listening to another country's decisions. The last thing here is length of the sim. You could tell them when it ends. Absolutely, 100% you could tell them when it ends. What does that do? It could allow for students to act more aggressively, knowing that when the sim ends, they have to make all of their points count before then. If they don't know when the sim ends, that shadow of the future, it's going to make them play as if it's more realistic. So I highly encourage that you can give them that structure. Maybe you say it's 7 to 10 weeks. So they know it's somewhere in there. You can always add another turn. If a student thinks that that's the end and then another turn comes about, it can completely screw up their strategy and force them to play something different in their hand. So giving them that end, maybe give them a cloudy future. And that could be really helpful in that. So that's part of the expectations that we recommend for your students. All right. The sim has to start at some point. They've registered. Now we are in turn 0. So before coming to class, students can click through that entire tutorial. So let's say you start having this turn 0 on a Tuesday. Well, maybe have the sim start on Monday so that they can log in. There's a tutorial for turn 0, turn 1, 2, and turn 3 that they click through to see how the sim works. It's honestly a lot easier for them to be interacting with one another in class if they've done that as a preparation for class. So give them that time outside of class to do that and encourage it. The students who start to do it more will become more engaged, and it might encourage all the other students to do it as well. Consider reviewing each government type and attribute. So during turn 0, the students are going to have to choose their government type, their attributes, their student roles, including the president, and then potentially choose some grading awards, which we'll get to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the instructor side and show you how that looks. So I'm just on the IR sim. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom to the instructor materials, and I'll zoom in a little bit. And then under instructor manuals and materials, you will go to, thank you. I'm pretty sure it's getting started. Where did it go? No, this is not it. I'm gonna have to redo this part. The manual, here it is. Sweet. Okay, student manual. So when I bring up the student manual, this is what they are going to use to choose their government types. So I'm going to just scroll down to where it says configure your country, and I'm going to click on that. Yes, naming, cities, decision key, regime type. This is when you really can get into what is a democracy? What are the bonuses for it? What are the penalties? What are the special abilities? Maybe have them read it aloud. Maybe have each group pick a little bit and then discuss it. You know, they're going to have to make these decisions as their country. So kind of walking through where these are at can be really helpful. Constitutional monarchy, bonuses, penalties, and special abilities. Communist totalitarian, same thing for those. And then the last, the military dictatorship. So once they have that, they can choose their government type. Yes, they can read this beforehand when they sign in that day before, but it also might be good to re-emphasize the importance of these. In addition to that, they get to choose 2 attributes. These attributes are not mutually exclusive in the sense that some do not go with specific government types, or some do not go with another attribute. So if I wanted to be industrial, I couldn't also be green. If I wanted to be militaristic, I couldn't be pacifist. And so those kind of like give and take are also going to play a role in, if I want to be a pacifist military dictatorship, you're like, does that line up well? You want to think about how that lines up for your country's strategy. So again, these are some good spots to start with your students that you can pull up on your screen and share with them. The second part is that there will be 2 quizzes that students can take during that turn 0 and turn 1 that they can be graded for like participation, or their score could be used. So if they get a 50%, obviously you can mark them as a 50%. What they will be doing is reading those manuals, that manual for the IR sim, and then answering questions based on it. If they get 100, fan-freaking-tastic. That's awesome. If they don't get 100, it's not the end of the world. The manual is definitely used as a guide. So when they ask a question or they have a question and they come to you, you can say, have you checked the manual yet? Have you reached out to support? Because those are really easy ways to get that information that will help out. So definitely adding those 2 would be helpful for you to make sure that they're in line with where they should be. The last thing here is the grading awards assignment. And if you don't have access to that, feel free to reach out to me. This gives them a chance to identify which grading awards, and I'll pull that up in an example class right now. So we're going to do this one right here. I'm going to jump into a student's world that is made up. So this will be
Santorini.
What's that?
It's the island of Santorini. That's awesome.
It is. Yeah, there you go. All right, Leah Bastion. We're going to scroll down on the left side here where it says grading awards. And this will be the place. They can also find this in their manual as well, but it's always on their dashboard to look back at. Now, there's not something that says this is how close you are to achieving this award in cahoots with all of your other countries. This is something that you could spy on other teams to understand where they might be at in achieving these awards. But you don't know when the turn ends or the simulation ends. So this is something that you might have to just go after in the dark a little bit. There's some ways to get information. There's 4 grading awards that are collective at the top: ending world hunger, global peace, wiping out global terrorism, and then save the planet. If your government type and your attributes support one or more of these, this grading awards assignment can help them identify which of those they want to go after and how they plan on achieving those awards using resources, technologies, and big projects, which they'll find out more about when reading the manual. There is a final quality of life index. This is the internal side of their country, so their domestic factions. What programs and domestic structures are they building in which cities to support those people so that those quality of life standards continue to increase? And this is an average of the entire simulation. So just because a country does really well in one of the final turns doesn't mean that they're going to achieve this 12 or 12 points. So that's something to think about. But again, how are they going to achieve that is part of this assignment. Lastly, there's collective or competitive awards here, healthiest, most educated, so on and so forth, that based on your government type could be easier to achieve. And knowing that during that turn 0 to turn 1 time period helps them think about it. Are they going to follow that plan to a T? I will guess 100% of the students will not. Now, I could be wrong, but there's a chance that they will have that as a guide so that it'll help them understand and how to navigate those issues. So those are 3 things to do in turn 0. As they're making these things, what do you do as the instructor? Well, you can walk around, see how they're doing. Hey, what name did you choose? What are your city names? What's your government type? How did you choose that as your government type? Just asking those questions can help them kind of figure out their decision-making process as a team. Is the president going to be an autocratic dictator, or are they going to make sure that everybody has buy-in and voice? And knowing that up front can also help you in supporting that. So take your time, walk around. Again, these are what students will choose. That's turn 0. Next are just overall statecraft days. So I mentioned a little bit before, picking a day can be really helpful. And that turn 0 through turn 3, they're going to have those tutorials. So encouraging them to maybe have it a day after that turn changes over so they can do that work before they get to class could be really helpful. Knowing that, hey, at the beginning of class is statecraft, or at the end of class or all of class is statecraft, gives them that expectation. All right, cool. Maybe what we're learning in class today has to do with what I'm going to do in statecraft. That'll come back to you, and we'll talk about that in a bit. When in class is a very big piece for those students, especially the ones who are looking forward to it. And they're like, I know I got to make a trade. I have 40 minutes at the end of class to do it. And then my team's meeting up after class. It gives them that peace of mind rather than I don't know when I'm going to have time to do this. And I'm going to make time right now. It's like, no, maybe you should pay attention in class too. And then I mentioned earlier, UN meetings. A lot of teachers could have used a bunch of different ways to engage students that are not just, hey, Statecraft Day. You could have a UN meeting day where the UN convenes. And yes, the countries can convene outside of that, but there may be some of these big collective action problems that need the attention of all the countries in the sim. And so making sure there's time for that and saying, hey, Thursday is our UN meeting and we won't have another one for 2 weeks. That could be really helpful for them to plan for and also lead potentially. Some teachers have done presidential states of the unions where every country gets up for 2 minutes at the beginning of class. The president gives a quick synopsis of what's going on in their country, not to give away too much information, but also to kind of lay the ground rules for, hey, we're looking for trades. We're looking to join in these international orgs. It's up to the students to kind of give as much or as little information as they want. International and domestic days kind of going in line with that UN meetings, but you can only work with your country now. Now you have this opened up and you can go work with any country on 2 specific days. So maybe 20 minutes and 20 minutes during a week. And then the last one is country video memos. So the way that students can be graded, and we're going to get into this in November a little bit more, but the idea of a weekly memo to reflect on their decisions doesn't have to only be in the form of a written testimonial, but also could be a group video. So if they have 5 minutes at the end of their class period to sit in the corner or different areas of the classroom to say, here are the decisions we made, here's why we made those decisions, and here's what we hope that will be coming from those decisions, they can look back at these videos at the end of the semester or the end of the sim when they're creating a debrief presentation or paper and say, man, that was 6 turns ago. what did I do? And they watch that and they say, ah, that's right. Wow, man, that really screwed us up for X, Y, and Z down the road, or that set us up for success. I'm so glad that we made that decision. So all those can be part of a Statecraft Day. You can also make as much else you want to in those areas, but that's up for you and your creativity. So those are examples of a Statecraft Day. Political advisor, you are this. This is your role, chief of staff, sounding board, political advisor. Your role is, depending upon the students in your class, could need to be a little bit more engaged, but also it may not need to be. And this is where you know your students most. So we say encourage student leadership here because this is their chance to have agency over their decisions that they might not normally have in other areas of your class. So as they move through the sim, you aren't telling them what to do, but when they come to you with questions, where are they then acting on those questions by you giving them avenues, potentially even through resources or just asking the question right back at them. So they ask you, hey, so we have a conflict. Someone has, threatened to invade our country. How can we protect ourselves? A good question to come back is, well, what do you know that could be established in your country or that you already have that is protecting you? And working from there and to support those students rather than telling them, well, do you have a ballistic missile system in these cities to protect you? Maybe having them find that out. Some areas that they might look, the menu or the manual, contacting support, Googling it, because it may have something to do with an example that's, the Cuban Missile Crisis, for example. How are they tying that back to the real world and bringing that into the classroom? What else have you taught in your class that could really give them a good stepping stone to saying, well, I've seen this happen before. Maybe I should choose this or not choose this decision. And so that's where asking questions and helping those students figure out where to find the answers is really helpful. Chances are someone in their class knows the answer. And more importantly, someone in their country knows the answer or in their alliance. And so if they're not working with their teams, that's going to help. This is, you're supporting that process is going to help bring them closer together as a team or an alliance. The sim is emotionally engaging. It's not that we can't get around it. That is the bread and butter of this sim. It will help them remember what they've done in your class. And there will be times when they're nervous or anxious or upset or ecstatic. And those emotions really bring out the theories. When those emotions are sparked, lean into them. Help those students lean into those emotions. It's not that they get that chance every single day in a school setting. And so why do you feel anxious about this decision? Why do you feel upset that someone has invaded your country? What do you want to do immediately? But then also working with them and understanding that like an immediate response to some emotion could potentially in the long term of the sim totally destroy their country. So what can you do to work with them to maybe take a second to breathe and then work through that and then think pragmatically about the decisions that their country can make? If they're doing it as a team, fantastic. That can make that bond even stronger. We see teachers tell us all the time that countries will come back as a country to the classroom that they took the class and be like, we're still friends. And I will tell you this as someone who did take the sim in college. I still am in touch with a few people from my country and we're good friends. One of them teaches social studies nowadays, which is pretty cool. So the ability for you to foster those relationships using those emotions it's ripe for the picking. Two last points here as a political advisor. You have so many options behind the scenes that we'll go over more in depth in the next couple months that help you pull levers and help show you how the sim is acting out that help you support specific students. One of those things being you get an email at the end of every turn and it says these students are excelling, these students need some support. So for the students that need support, reach out to them. When you have your Statecraft Days, Maybe walk up and talk to them. Hey, noticed you haven't been making a lot of decisions. Why is that? What's going on? What do you need? And maybe it's like, oh, I'm actually not making decisions. We're using one computer and we're making all of our decisions through there. Oh, that's totally fine. Why did you choose to do that? Just curious. So finding those avenues of how to utilize what's on the instructor dashboard and what you get in your emails can be really helpful. And the last big thing here is connect the dots. When you do see those interactions happening in a log that you have access to on your instructor dashboard, and then the visual of the map, which again we'll go over the next couple months, how will you utilize what's happening to connect back to your class? War is about to break out. You can see it. There's military building up on two sides of this country, this borderline. Are you going to start talking about mirror imaging and the security dilemma in class before you have the sim start? I specifically remember Dr. Keller doing that. And we started the sim and we were like, oh my gosh, what he was just talking about is playing out. I bet this military dictatorship that's sharing this island is about to attack us, but maybe we should use some diplomacy first. And so we did, and we talked to them, and they were like, "We're not trying to attack you." Oh, whew, that would have been costly. So finding ways to connect that back to the class can be huge as a political advisor and helping them navigate what their decisions will be. Best practices. These are best practices based on what we've seen in classes. So knowing how much structure your students need. There is a video series coming out with Nick Gensheimer in a few weeks who use the IR sim with 182 eighth graders. They needed a little bit more structure than high school students. They also need a lot more structure than college or grad school students. And so knowing what your class structure is and how much support to give students will be super helpful for their engagement. If they need every Tuesday is our Statecraft Day, then maybe that's what you reinforce. You know, do you send an email out? Do you tell them on Monday? You tell them on Friday? Like, how are you giving them that structure to make sure that they can engage in a way where maybe they've prepped for it? Hey, on Tuesday, we're going to make sure that our memos are due so that you can then get ready for the next turn and utilize those decisions that you made in the last turn. So knowing that structure, how much the student structure is, how much structure they need is super important. Incentivize correctly. There's a lot of different ways to incentivize, and we'll be going over the assignment aspect of that in the October and November workshops. But are you incentivizing correctly? Yes, you can use grades as an incentive. You can use bonus points as an incentive, but also like, how else could you incentivize? I mean, some teachers could do a pizza party, you know, like if everybody in the class has quality of life over 5 points, we're doing a pizza party. You know, what do the students want and how are you tying that back? Oh, I've got a good one for you. Ooh, I love this one. I'm going to show you a little bit. This is a sneak preview. We're gonna dive into my instructor dashboard here. Under test banks, you can create a resource quiz. And so what this means is you could tie direct questions from what you want in your class curriculum to resources in the sim. You get this question right, your country gets 25 gold. Boom, bringing it right back to the sim so that they're like, I want it. Like, can I have more resource quizzes, please? And then therefore taking those grades, putting them back into the syllabus and incentivizing them in ways that they see fit. So there's a lot of different ways you can incentivize. I'm sure your class is specific to what you know works well. Reaching out to other teachers to help in understanding what they do in the IR sim could be helpful on our Reddit channel as well. So definitely want you to think about how your class is incentivized. Another one, I know that Jennifer, you're going to have all girls. Do they respond better to collective problems than competitive problems? That is something that we've noticed in our classes, is that the all boys schools and the schools where there are more boys are typically more aggressive. So how do you weave that in? Number 3, keep the world slightly more aggressive than passive. You know, if you're on a scale from like passive to aggressive, you want to be just on the more aggressive side. And the reason why we say that is because it keeps students on their toes. When things are passive and just, you know, moving along, you know, there's situations in the sim with terrorists and pirates that end the ice mountain melting that will put, you know, their feet to the fire. But if you can continually like bring in a little bit more of an aggressive nature to some aspects of the sim, it will keep students asking questions and, more importantly, glued to the engagement of the sim. So just on that aggressive side of the passive. And if you have questions more about your specific sim, you can always reach out to support and we can help you on those. And then the active learning techniques. So active learning is something that Dr. Marianne Gallagher, who uses Statecraft and has for 10 years, is an expert on, and she's given a few points to us. And so the country reflections is a piece that can be extremely helpful. If you're going through the sim without reflecting on your decisions, it's basically just a game. Not to say that you're not going to learn from it by any means, but if you really want to build some engagement and active learning, ask those questions throughout the sim in tying back to your class in why they're making decisions and how they're making those decisions, what their anticipated outcomes will be, and then looking back. Hey, what's turn 6 is what is a decision you made in turn 1, 2, or 3 that has paid off? What hasn't paid off? What has actually hurt your strategy? Those active learning techniques, again, will build up to the end of the sim when you put on your debrief presentation or paper, that students can really gain that full and complete semester educational, I'm blanking here. The learning, it's going to happen if they do it throughout the whole simulation. So those are best practices. If you're curious about more of this, definitely go on the Reddit channel and throw some questions out there to other teachers to see what they can do. One of the last slides here is who do you invite? And I put this in here so that for two reasons, probably for more. One is, how do you include this in your budget year after year? Well, if not only you and the students, but the administration and sometimes even higher up in the district level, depending upon your school organization, sees that this is an important piece of a classroom, they're going to want to make sure that it comes back every year. So invite them to come see what's going on. What we recommend is some of those last few turns if they want to see it in action, or even at the debriefing presentation. I also put in here principal. You can invite other students to see some of this too. It really is up to you in terms of how you want to position your class at your school and in your district. The debriefing presentation, highly recommended. You could do a paper and a presentation. You could do a paper, you could do a presentation, whatever mix it is. But we highly recommend this because this is that chance for the curtain to be open, to see the strategies that other students had throughout the entire sim, and to be like, man, I thought you were my best friend, but you were totally scamming me for my gold so that you could build this military and take us over. Had no clue, right? Those kinds of strategies behind the scenes can be really enlightening for students. And here's an example. I have the YouTube link there so you can see it. This is a school in Turkey where they designed their own flags too. They had an entire presentation that their other teachers, other students, parents, and family members were invited to, and they walked through their sim. They talked about their decisions, and this was something they had to prep for. This was a very big part of their grade, but it was also a good chance for public speaking and a chance to consolidate their decisions in a linear fashion. So having that debrief presentation at a school auditorium could be cool. Do it however you please. But another thing I included here are future student players and alumni. Why do this? Because you get people talking about it, and then those people come back and they say, what's going on in Statecraft? You get that relationship connection between students who are in the sim and alumni, which if you foster that correctly could turn into internships, jobs, careers, friendships, then the list goes on. So having that debriefing presentation could be really special for your class in that sense. There's a lot more things that you could do. I know that you're going to be creative in your own ways, so feel free to do that however you see fit. I'm going to jump ahead here to this activity. This is something you can do on your own. I bring this up just so that you have a little bit of structure based on today. What's your specific simulation? You know, are you using the IR? Are you using the IR Lite? Are you using the US Gov Sim? Specify that first. You've heard a little bit about what goes on in turn 0 or period 0. What do you want your plan to be? You know, if you've taken notes, great. What does this actually start to culminate in your first turn? What does a statecraft day look like for you? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? In 1 day, how long is it going to be? You know, get this plan kind of formulated for yourself. And then how do you plan to engage the students? We gave you a bunch of examples, but what's your specific way that you want to engage your students? You know the students best. You're the expert in that classroom. And then who you going to invite and when? At what point in time? Put it on their calendar. Make sure they know. If you have a parent teacher conference coming up and you want to invite the parents to this thing, make sure they know then so that they have that for 3 months out or for 6 months out. Get them to be psyched about it just as much as their kids, because when their kids come home and they're like, you know, Globistan attacked us and we had to, respond. The parents aren't going to be like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, okay, Globistan attacked you, but what about, the other countries? So feel free to go through that on your own. And then share out on our Reddit channel, I would say. The Reddit channel here, reddit.com/r statecraft_high school. Feel free to go in there and do that. Set up your simulation. If you haven't yet, you can always do that and then come back and chat with me and figure out more information or any of our support staff. Register for some upcoming workshops. We've got some great workshops coming up. In October, it'll be assignments, alignment, and creation. So we're actually going to create some assignments in that time for your own class. We'll share those out with other teachers. We'll talk about grading and incentivization more in November. We'll talk about the instructor controls. Sometimes people call it the God controls that are all behind the scenes and how you can utilize those. And then in January, we're going to have an instructor community panel just for you to ask questions of other teachers who've used this. We will be running a international relations instructor competition and a U.S. government instructor competition in spring, and you can register for those on the same page here. Plus, if you missed one of these and you want to watch the recording, scroll down and look through the past workshops, and you can see all that stuff there. With that, thank you. Appreciate your time. You're awesome.